those that don't know us, I'm Robin Bennett, by the way, and Susan is over there on the other screen. Susan Briggs, we're co-founders of the Dog Gurus, and our company helps pet care businesses launch, grow, and profit. So we want to thank you guys for all being here. It's always fun to talk to folks that are out there in the industry and help you answer questions and help you just realize you're not alone in whatever challenges you're having. And also just to help each other. And I know lots of our members have great ideas. So our topic today is going to be on what we are considering some of the top 3 tips for hiring new staff members. And I'm going to start with the 3 C's. And the 3 C's is something I learned a long time ago by a guy by the name of Bill Hybels. And he did some leadership training stuff that I had attended and watched, actually through my church, but he did a lot of leadership training for church leaders. But one of the things that he talked about in terms of hiring, and I have pretty much lived by this rule to this day, is to always look at the 3 C's, which are chemistry, character, and competence. So those are the 3 C's. And he always would say, which of those C's do you think is the most important when you're hiring? So I'm going to ask you guys that, if you just want to type in the chat box, which of those 3 C's, character, chemistry, or competence? So character meaning what kind of person you are, chemistry meaning do you match with everybody else, and competence meaning how well you do your job or can you do your job. Which of those 3 do you guys think is the most important? So I'm going to give you guys a chance to type your thoughts about that. They're all important, but which do you think is most important? I'm not going to say anything else until somebody types that in.
Be brave. Robin will not tell you're wrong.
Okay, so Anne said character. Anyone else have a guess? Vesna said character also. Character. Lots of people say character. So I love that nobody has said competence, because I feel like, so lots of other people saying all. Janine said all of them. And yeah, they definitely, all 3 are important when you're looking for somebody. But a lot of us, I think, get wrapped up around finding the person who's worked in a pet care facility before. Or when I was in dog training and hiring dog trainers, people got wrapped around the axle wanting to hire a person who already knew how to train dogs or that had trained in another facility. And frankly, that is like the least of my worries. So for me, competence actually comes last, because it's important, but I can teach people to be better at their job. And we can get in a whole discussion about how you do that and the best way to train your staff and the best way to have SOPs and a training program and all that. But the bottom line is, I can teach someone how to do their job. That's easy. That's actually the easy part, teaching someone how to do their job. I won't say everybody's got all the things in place to do that, but that's something you can train. Anybody can learn how to do stuff. So I would say that competence, hiring for competence, is the least important of those 3 C's. I do think character is important. It's sometimes a little bit harder to judge character, short of doing background checks and asking a few questions, finding out. I would definitely do the background checks. I would definitely do reference checks. I would always call references, because there's no other way to find out about character other than the way you feel when the person comes in, which we all know is not the best way to judge character. It's obviously going to give you some idea. Do they show up on time? Have they responded promptly to some of that will tell you, but really the only way you're really going to find out about character is to do some investigative reporting of your own. So checking out Facebook pages, finding out what the social media of that person looks like, which is very common in corporate America today. And you should be doing that for your employees, doing background checks, doing reference checks, asking a few questions. So character, I think, is important. But for me, the most important aspect when I hire is chemistry. And you don't necessarily have to agree that these 3 are the same for you. But for me, chemistry was the most important factor. I wanted someone that would fit with my team. And so I did believe in working interviews. I did believe in having more than one person interviewing the individual. It might not be at the same, you might have somebody that gets interviewed multiple times, so that there's more than just one person involved with the interview. For my dog trainers, I used to have them do an actual dog training class with a dog, take their dog through a training class before I ever even considered bringing them on as a trainer. And part of that was because it gave my team a chance to meet the person and figure out if they thought the person would be a good fit. So I would really look at those 3 C's in your hiring process and how you consider them and what you consider most important, and then how you're trying to determine, does the person fit? Is the person capable of learning? Do they want to learn? And is the person have sound character, or at least not have a lot of negative stuff that they need to overcome in the background? Not that you can't overcome some of that, but you just want to know that up front. So that's my starting point, Susan.
That was good. And I think mine's similar. Although, what I've learned after having my business for several years was that it's best to, you've got to be really clear in your mind about the culture that you want, the core values that are important to the people that are on your team, which goes into the character and the chemistry both. I think you have to know those and be able to write down what aspects of character are most important to you and that you're looking for when you are interviewing to hire. Because if you don't have that clear in your own mind, then you're not going to necessarily be able to select someone that's going to be the fit you want. What does it look like to have good chemistry with the other people? It doesn't mean everybody has to agree and think alike, but it means you do have to be able to communicate and resolve issues that come up without getting upset and causing drama. Because I know that's what everybody's like, we don't want any more drama. So I think just taking some time and getting really clear on what you want that chemistry to look like, that character to look like, and then figuring out, like you said, how are you going to investigate it? And part of it can be in interview questions. And I think one good thing is if you do say what aspects of character you're looking for or what aspects of core values are important, if dependability is part of that, you can Google interview questions to determine candidates' dependability and get all kinds of ideas, questions you can ask that will tell you some insights about that aspect of their character.
So Crystal said she needs to hire contractors rather than regular full-time help. And that brings up a really good point, because I actually treated those hires the same. Now, so first of all, I'll just say full-time or employees versus contractors is defined by law. So we're not going to get into should they be this, that, or the other. It's basically defined by law. So just go look at the laws and you'll be able to identify whether someone should be a contractor or an employee. But in terms of how hiring those people, I still look at them the same way. I still want, whether it's a contractor or a 1099 contract employee, 1099 contract subcontractor, or an employee, I'm still hiring on the same type of criteria, to be perfectly honest. I still want somebody that has character. I still want somebody that I can help train. Normally, that's a little bit less of an issue because normally a contractor is trained in whatever you're hiring them for. Not always, but most of the time. But they might have to learn some specifics about my company. And then I 100% still want chemistry. I don't care who you are. If you're an accountant, a copywriter, and these are some of the contractors we have. Our coaches, for the most part, are contractors, most of them. We've got virtual assistants that are contractors that are on 1099s. All of them still have to have chemistry. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's a lawyer, so he doesn't need to mesh with our team. No, our bookkeeper needs to mesh with our team. Like, they all still need to have that chemistry with our team. And the only one advantage is they do have usually the background. Like, our copywriter obviously is trained in copywriting. So all she needed to learn in terms of competence was the specifics about our customer and our avatar. She already knew how to write copy. Just like if you're going to hire someone for marketing, they know the basics of marketing, but you're going to have to teach them the competence piece, which is about your client. So I would still look at some of those same things. I don't know, Susan, if you have a different thought on that.
Definitely, if they're part of your team and interacting, a bad contractor can be like, it's one bad apple runs the bunch. And we've talked to a lot of business owners over the years, and the tendency is that the bad apple is a key position, and people hang on to them too long, and that can keep you from bringing and keeping other really good employees if you let bad apples stick around.
I love, here's some additional C's: confidence without cockiness. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I do think humility is a great trait to have in anybody. I think I want someone who is confident, but they also need to be teachable.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for somebody who's humble enough to say, I've done it this way before, but is willing to look at new ideas or new other ways to do something that can be taught. So I love that, confidence without cockiness. And then Crystal also said her employment questionnaire actually focuses more on chemistry than anything else. So again, then Debbie said, I think the chemistry is important based on communication. If you have chemistry, I think someone will be more open with communicating to the right person. And I do think chemistry in part is there's a lot of communication involved, and definitely being able to talk among, not just among the team and the clients, but your team has to be able to talk too. And that chemistry is all about, I think it's all a lot about trust and kind of mutual respect, and being able, and that does play into how well you communicate, because when you don't trust each other, you tend to not talk to each other, or you tend to always think somebody's out to get you or whatever. So the communication does tend to shut down. And I know, Susan, you're big on the whole communication factor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay to have conflict. It's how you handle conflict. And I think too often it's avoided, and then things fester and then they explode. And so it's better to get cards on the table and figure out a way to resolve and move forward. And that's why when you hire people that align with the company's mission and values, you have that to go back to. Robin, you and I, whenever we have difference of opinion on what to do, we always go back to our shared vision of our company's mission and purpose and values. And if everybody can align with that, then there shouldn't be an issue that you can't get beyond. The problem comes is when you don't have that alignment, and then people will have different camps will set up.
Yeah, and I think that's so critical, and having those, and this is why you really need your team involved with your goals. First of all, let me just back up. First of all, you need goals. As the business owner, you need to have some shared goal. You need to have some goals for your business. You need to have a direction for your business. So if you've ever worked with the dog gurus, we always talk about setting goals, and they don't have to be like 12-year goals. I'm talking like for the next 90 days, what are your goals? Susan and I actually do annual planning, and we have a year's worth of goals that we break down into quarters. Now, a year like last year, every single one of those, not every single one of them, but a whole lot of those goals were thrown out the window because of COVID. But we didn't just throw them out the window and go, whatever, that's not going to work. We created different goals. For some of our goals, we just made them smaller. Some of the goals, we just completely generated new ones based on COVID. But then we share those with our team, because then, to Susan's point, when a conflict does arise, it's not about like your opinion versus that person's opinion. It's about, okay, let's see, because a lot of times everybody's ideas are great, but let's go back, and you can't do everything. So let's go back and look at as a team, what our goals are, and which of these 5 things that you guys are bringing up are going to get us to our goal in the best way. And then it takes the drama out of it, because now you're really just talking about goals. So in a pet care facility, obviously care of the animals and providing really good quality care is hugely important. So if you have a situation where somebody's not showing up on time, it's not like that person's a slacker because they never show up on time. That could be the case. However, the conversation really needs to be, our shared goal is that every single animal gets cared for in this way. And those animals are relying on somebody, living animals relying on someone to get them out, or to feed them, or to get them into enrichment, or whatever it is. And so it's not just, we're going to beat you up because you overslept or you just can't seem to get here in time. It's the fact that we're committed to providing quality care. And that means you have to show up on time, or you're letting down not just the animal, you're letting down the whole team who now has to, because that, whether you show up or not, that animal has to be taken care of. And so you're letting down the animal and the whole team because now they're having to cover for you. It's not if you just are in a job where you have to fill out reports and do some paperwork. Yeah, maybe your paperwork could be a few hours late. It's not the case when you're dealing with live animals. So that whole conversation looks a lot different. And that's all of the stuff I would be talking to people about when you are hiring them, when they're coming in and you're talking about the vision for your company and what's most important to your company. And because don't just assume they're thinking that way, because I can tell you they're probably not unless they've worked in pet care before. So you have to really make sure they understand what it means to actually make a commitment to be an employee for a pet care facility and working with those animals. All right, so Deb said, Mike. Kayla Ann said, we always, I don't know if this will all show it. We always make sure, think of putting equity in a bank and continuously building that with teammates and between one another, and focus on letting potential new members know that feedback are both positive and will be about improvement. So I love that. And we use that actually a lot with dog training. So where you're doing all the positive stuff and rewards you're doing with dogs is like putting that money into a bank account. So it's the same principle. But also I love the idea of making sure that you're encouraging feedback, but you're also setting the tone of, and I actually heard this on another Zoom call I was on a couple weeks ago, where Gila from Dog is Good was talking about bring me problems, but bring them to me with a solution. So don't just vent and be like, oh, this is ridiculous. And you need to tell your team this. You need to verbally say, I want to hear feedback from you, but it needs to be couched as solution-based challenges. So you're not just bringing me a challenge and dropping it in my lap and it's my job to fix it. You're bringing me a challenge, but let's try to think of solutions for it too. So when your discussions with your team will be a lot different if you can instill that in them. And now I will say on the other side of the coin, I happen to be a problem solver. Like I'm one of those people that when you do come to me and you're like, oh, I hate this, I'm like, okay, let me fix it for you. That's just me. And the problem is that I have to not do that when I have a team, because sometimes I do need to sit back and let them bring me solutions and listen to what ideas they have. So there is a two-way street there, I think, between the leader and the staff.
So I think you have to think about hiring, like marketing and getting new clients, that you've got to have a good pool of applicants. And so how do you ensure that you're getting the applicants that you want for your business? And so we're saying you should always be looking for those kind of 18 players, rock stars, and have a process to where when they come, you'll be ready to make them an offer and hire them, even if maybe you don't have a position right now. And so you've got to think about how you get leads. And I think you need to think about building your team is just a different type of marketing that you're doing for your business. You have to convince the really rock stars why they should come work for you and not another business in your community. So what's in it for them? And that's why we talk a lot about investing in staff training and building careers in pet care and letting people know that there can be a career. There's even certifications that people can get. And so you've got to be recruiting and marketing and telling why people should choose you. You're on, I don't know what like on show, why your business is the one they should pick, and then make a decision quickly.
Yeah, and actually, Stephanie, I was just going to share her comments because she said, represent yourself well in the community. Don't forget that when you're selling yourself to potential new customers, you're also selling yourself as a potential employer as well. And I think especially nowadays where unemployment is actually fairly high, at least here in the United States. And I think people are like, people should just want to come and work with me because they need a job. There's so many people at a job, they should just come and work with me. And now think about that. Is that the person you want to work with? The person who's just, they should just be happy I'm giving them a job. No, let me just say your 18 players do not want to work for that. They want to work with somebody that is giving them a career, that is giving them responsibility, that is giving them respect and training and a way forward, not just I'm hiring because I need a warm body. And that comes across in, just go out and look at job interviews. You don't even have to be looking for a job. Just go look at job interviews. You will see job interview or applications. You will see those applications that just look like any warm body will do. That's not motivating. You're going to attract the kind of person that you're promoting in your ad. So you do have to take a look at your ad, and you're going to see some ads that are like any warm body will do. We're desperate. Just come in and we will pay you. And we don't care what you're like. But your 18 players, then those are the people that we all want. They're looking for something more. They're looking for, especially honestly, the younger generation, I would say between 20 and I will say younger, still at 35 to 40, younger than me. So those people are looking for a job that provides a mission, a bigger mission beyond themselves and beyond the job. So caring for the animals, helping to support the community, being able to provide them with the education and responsibility, and a career path is even better. Those people want that, but they're going to see that first in the job description or the application that you provide when you're hiring. And I'm telling you, if you've never just gone and cruise through Indeed, just go look at what's out there and you'll start to see, wow, there's some jobs there's no way I would apply for. And then there's other jobs that are like, that sounds interesting. And I don't even have those skills. But so it's a good thing to do periodically just to get an idea of what you might be up against when you're advertising your own job positions. And then getting them in and actually having a process for them to get trained is a whole nother thing that we're going to do a totally separate Facebook Live on. But that's the whole second step, is you have to be able to bring them in and treat them as if hopefully you do have a formal process to get them trained, so they're not just thrown to the wolves when they come into your facility.
Well,
So
and I think that you need to show a professional, formal process during the interview as well. You need to be on time and prepared for them and know who they're going to see when, what paperwork they're going to fill out, and show that you're expecting them and respecting their time as well. And I know, Robin, one of the points you always make is, how do you communicate with the people you've decided not to select? And do you actually communicate and tell them that? Do you tell them the next steps of the process so they understand when they'll hear from you? Laying all that out shows that you're professional and respectful of their time and decision process as well as your own.
So we had a couple of questions about keeping up with hiring laws and employment laws, and I would definitely make sure that you know those for your community or your state or province or city. Karen said she uses an employment agency that pre-screens candidates, does drug tests, do interviews, and they have worked with them and know their staffing needs. So that helps to take care of some of that HR stuff as well. I think we are seeing more and more people that are moving to things like a company that does background checks or a company that does some of the screening. And then a lot of companies that do, like Indeed, where you can put applications out and they will help you to pre-screen some of the stuff before you see them all. So there's a lot of ideas out there. And in terms of just hiring laws, I think understanding the bare minimums of what you are allowed to ask and what you're not allowed to ask, because there are very specific laws about what you're allowed to say or not say or ask a candidate. So making sure you understand that. And most of the time, your local city or state, like your local community, chamber of commerce or whatever, can usually refer you to someone that will help you with some of that as well. I don't know if you have any other comments on that.
No, if you have a payroll company, they may have that as an added service that you can get through them, assistance with human resource management. PEOs are another way, a little bit more broad-based than just a payroll processing company that can help educate you. But yeah, you definitely need to know. And so you start with a Google search, and there'll be federal and state and potentially local laws that you need to be aware of and comply with.
So some other comments. Stephanie said when they hire, they do tell people up front that they're required to be PAC certified within 18 months. So that PAC certification, I think, is great. We have some people that require, if you're going to hire a groomer, they require them to go to Paragon, or if they're going to do canine body language or run your daycare, they might be required to do knowing dogs. But I think setting that up front and letting the new potential employee know that sets the stage for, this is not just a warm body filling a spot. Like, you have responsibility for them and accountability, and it's going to give them a different feel for when they're going to come on board with you, of just setting those expectations right from the start. And then someone, I can't find it now, but somebody asked if, oh, here it is. Is it important to get people that want to be in pet care? What do you think about college students studying film, for example? So I actually don't think it's important that people want to be in pet care. I think they need to like people, and it's nice if they like pets as well. Most of the time, we get people that really like pets and don't like people. That can be a problem. So I really want people that are friendly and nice. That was one of the things I told people all along. I was like, hire nice people.
Yeah.
That's a starting point. I don't think it matters if they're studying another area, like if they're studying film. What you do have to realize is they probably aren't going to stay with you because they may be on another path. Not necessarily a reason not to hire them, because those can turn into really good summer help or really good help at the holidays if they were to come back home during that time or whatever. But you do have to realize that if they're on a totally different career path, that they might leave. I would try to get somebody that's going to be there at least for a little while. So it's not, oh, in 6 months I'm going to graduate and move, because that's just a shorter period of time. But I don't necessarily go and only find people that are wanting to do something in pet care. Because honestly, a lot of, especially younger folks, like in their 20s, and so they don't even know what they want to do. So it's very likely they're thinking, oh, I want to do this, but they get involved with pet care and you provide them another job career path, they may end up staying with you. Like, so I wouldn't rule that out either. And then Julie said, rock stars don't need to have dog background if trained according to your methods. I actually prefer people that have no dog background, like as trainers, because then I'm not trying to break any bad habits. I'm just teaching them the way that I want them to do things. So that's actually a downside. You can hire great people from another pet care business, but if they don't have the same philosophy as you, or they haven't been trained the same way, then sometimes you are breaking bad habits and trying to retrain them. So that can sometimes be a problem. What else do you have about that type of stuff, Susan?
No, I definitely agree that I learned early on I didn't really want people with experience because I wanted to train them my way. But the key is that you have that training program formalized, and we are going to talk more about that in a different session.
Yeah, and then Deborah said, we love our college helpers. When they do leave, they've already brought their backup. And again, those folks that are going to be coming back, I know a lot of people that very successfully bring those people back as their seasonal help. So you don't want to necessarily rule out some of those people, because they can be really, when COVID's over and we have the spring break surge and the summer surge and the holiday, Christmas, Thanksgiving type holiday surges, those seasonal helpers can be great, and they've already been trained. So they just come back and work with you guys again. And then Debbie said, agrees with Julie, rather hire someone who doesn't have bad habits in the industry. Honestly, some of the best people you can hire, and I think you've probably heard Susan and I talk about this in the past, but going to the idea of hiring people who are nice, hiring people who have been in the hospitality industry is a great thing to look for. So when you're at a restaurant and get a server who's just amazing, those servers, you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I had someone like that work in my facility. Hey, ask them if they might want to work in your facility. If you go to a hotel and you're treated with exceptional customer service, if you go anywhere, it doesn't have to be just the hospitality industry, but anywhere you go, if somebody is providing you with amazing customer service and customer support, because we all can admit that we all think that's amazing, and it doesn't happen. Like, when it happens, we're all like, whoa, that person just provided me amazing customer service. Those are the people you should be hiring. Those are the people who honestly have either been trained to do it, or they have a natural tendency and do it on their own. Those are some of the best employees you could have. because our industry, yes, it's about taking care of animals, but we're also trying to provide, hopefully, excellent customer service. We're in a service-based industry. So it really matters how well your clients are taking care, your staff is taking care of your clients, not just the four-legged clients, but the pet parents as well. And I think sometimes we tend to focus so much on the dogs that we forget about the other end of the leash. And believe me, we've seen people that will bypass one pet care facility and go farther to attend a different one because the customer service is better at that other one. We've all done that. We've all done that in different industries. So it's no difference in the pet industry as well.
I think it's important to spend time with your job description so that the responsibilities and your expectations for someone to be successful in the role, and then what skills and knowledge do they need to be successful. And I think sometimes we just jump in without looking and having our paperwork. And it's important to also let the team member know that this is your job role and our expectation for that, so that they start out knowing what success in the role looks like and what your expectations are. And then it's always good to have standard interview questions created for each role, because the knowledge and skills you want are different. So you need to have different interview questions. And if you're trying to decide between candidates, you want to have asked them the same questions so that you can do an apples to apples comparison of responses.
Yeah, and like I said, I would always do some type of interview where other people can see that individual as well. So initially you have your job description already written so you can clearly articulate what the job is, what the responsibilities are, and what the traits are that a person needs to do those things. And we talked about earlier, like dependability or punctuality. If you're hiring somebody that needs to be answering the telephone, you might have some kind of communication skills requirement. You might have them be able to write, whatever it is. Most of the time we're looking at care of the dog. So it's being able to learn how to take care of the dogs, but being on time and being responsible, and all of that is important. So having that job description, and then you're going to write that ad. And then when you get the applications coming in, normally there's somebody that's screening those applicants. You'll find a few, you might want to interview them. Maybe you do a phone interview. Maybe you just have them come in. Top of the pack, I would still have another interview where there's other people, not just the same person over and over. Obviously, if you're working by yourself, this might be how you start out. But eventually, when you have a team, you do want to have a way for other team members to interview. Maybe not the entire team, but maybe a few selected people. And maybe they're doing a working interview where they come in and they work for a couple of hours with your team, so you can get an idea of how they're going to mesh with your team and how well they're going to respond to what's happening in the environment and that kind of thing. Maybe it's your general manager that interviews if you did the first one or whatever, but you just want to have a couple of steps. Like I would say, don't make it overly simple for someone to get in the door, because you really want to, I don't want to make them jump through hoops. But at the same time, I want to be very thoughtful in the process you're using to bring people in. And if it's literally, I can call you and you're like, can you start tomorrow? That might be a little too fast.
Yeah.
And if you're having we would just say, if you're having a really high revolving door of turnover, don't just assume it's because the applicants all suck. And honestly, maybe they do. But very rarely do we work with somebody who has a really high turnover. Very rarely do we work with them and go, oh yeah, in your area, everyone sucks. Just good luck to you. You're never going to hire someone. Like, we never say that. Usually we're saying, okay, maybe some of these applicants weren't the best, but also there's a whole lot of refinement you can do. Maybe you don't even have a job description. Maybe you're like, we expect them to do everything right away, and then people are overwhelmed, so they quit. Maybe you have no standard process for interviewing. And so you just go by, like, seems like they would be a good fit. So let's bring them in and try them out. It's expensive to just try somebody out. So you want to make sure you can do as much in the preparation stage before you actually hire that person to make it worthwhile for you to bring them on. And then once they, and we'll talk about this later, but once you do hire them, what are you doing to make sure that you're providing them enough foundation to make them successful? And so they don't get frustrated and leave. So that's like a whole separate part. But so I would really be looking at your whole process of how are you finding the applicants? What are you telling the applicants? How are you hiring them? And then how are you training them once they're on board? And usually there's breakdowns in that when you're having a really high turnover rate.
And I would change one thing at a time, just like in marketing, where you only change one thing at a time and test. Maybe you start with changing your ad and rework your ad and see if you get different applicants. If you get some better ones and then you're happier, then maybe you're going to change your interview process and what questions you're asking. I know some of our members have shared that they like having candidates that they're really serious about, meet them at a coffee shop or maybe go to lunch, because they want to observe how do they interact with people that are serving them. And it goes back to, are they nice to others that are in a role of service?
Whitney said, any input on group interviews? I've heard of these recently. I'm curious. We try to do 2 separate working interviews with all different employees to get as much feedback as possible, but I'm interested in the group interview process. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Susan?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can do a group interview process. I know some people will have 4 or 5 people come in and actually just, the first part of the interview is actually everybody in the group ask questions and then they go to some one-on-one sessions, or the group starts with maybe some of your team members and you're not there. And so you get to see your team members can report how did they do on just, it's a holding area and you're just doing some informal interactions until the one-on-one start. So there's different ways to do it. I would be clear on what your goal is and what you're trying to get out of doing a group interview. If it's just to save you time in the interview process, I don't know that it's worth it. And I'd love to hear people who do group interviews what they found.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think the main goal is you have to have a point for having the group interview that's helping you to make decisions, not just making it more efficient for you, which could be the only goal, but I would still have other goals within that because I think there's other ways to make things more efficient without necessarily doing a group interview. So if you're doing a group interview, there's usually things that you're setting up so that you can draw things out of your potential employees. And then Julie said, my favorite hire was a girl who was a terrific front desk at a super expensive highbrow beauty salon that she poached from her beauty salon, which is, again, if you see somebody that is a really good employee somewhere and is doing an amazing job, don't be afraid to say, hey, if you're ever looking for another job, here's my card. We have openings or whatever. And then somebody just had something else. Oh, Catherine was asking, what do you suggest for hiring management, a staff supervisor or a GM? Is it best to promote from within? And how can you find an outside person? So I'll start this and then I'll throw it to you, Susan. But I think the biggest thing when you're hiring a supervisor or a GM is understanding going back to what Susan talked about earlier, the job description and the critical skills needed to accomplish that job. Because those skills are generally different from the skills you need as an employee who is working, let's say, in the daycare. So your daycare employee, they need to be dependable, they need to be punctual, they need to be able to learn and understand how to take care of the dogs. They don't need to know a thing about managing people or teams like your basic employee. Maybe they can do that, and if that is the case, then you could promote them. But you have to make sure that the supervisor position, there's an element of skills that are different than the average employee. You cannot just, and this is what we see most commonly, is we see somebody that's, they're a really good employee, I'm going to make them a manager.
Right.
and the person has really good skills to work independently and zero skills and not that a person with zero skills can't learn, but this is going to go back. I'm going to circle back to this in a second. But when you hire that supervisor who has been friends with all of their peers, and now you've made them supervisor and you don't give them any coaching or training on how to be a supervisor, that is setting them up for failure, because you have to provide them the skills and the coaching they need. You can't just assume that because they've worked for you for a year, they know their job. And so I'm just going to make them a supervisor or a GM and expect that to go well. You still have to say, what's the job description? What are the skills they need? And how am I going to train them to do those skills? And I think the biggest problem is most people don't look at the skills that person needs, and they're totally different. So if you have somebody that has those skills, awesome. I love hiring from within. I would always try to hire from within as my first goal, because that gives your team a promotion path. But at the same time, you still have to have the skills, the training for that person to help them. Just because they've been there a year doesn't mean they don't need training on their new job. And that some of that training needs to include how you communicate with a team, how you build a team, how you nurture a team, and how to be a team leader, not just the team member, which they might be really good at. So I think that would be my first thing. I don't know, Susan, if you have other thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. The managing and the leadership of people are very unique skill set that intuitively some people have, but oftentimes it is not the same, as you said, Robin. And so you either have to be prepared to give them all that training and skill development, or are they willing to go out and learn that? Some people are wanting the promotion to make more money, but they really don't want to do the work and the responsibility that's part of that new job description. And I think that's where you really have to talk about the challenges of being in a management role. So if you're looking for someone who has outside of pet care to come in and be a supervisor or manager, you want them to have had experience leading similar type positions. And that's where I would agree with Robin, going back to the hospitality industries. You can find some good people there, even retail. They work with a lot of entry level employees. And then find out, are they interested in learning the pet care details? Because they should learn that. They do need to have that knowledge as well. That if they're coming in with good people skills, are they willing to learn the pet side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great thing to look at, but it all goes back to, for every position you hire, you really need to understand the job description and the skills required to do the tasks and the responsibilities that are on the job description. And that's the starting point. Before you ever even put an ad out, you need to understand that. So that's regardless of what the position is, whether it's an entry level position or it's a GM or a supervisor type of position. All right, I think we're running about out of time. So hopefully this has been helpful. If you have any last minute comments or questions, type them in the chat box really quick. I will say very briefly that if you want to continue the discussion, we do have conversation in our Facebook group, which is the Grow Your Pet Care Facebook group. So I'll put a link into the chat box shortly on that. And then do you also want to talk about March Madness, Susan?
Absolutely. You still have a couple of days where you can join us for our March Madness. It's a month of education challenge to where we're having educational content targeted to different roles on your team. This week we've been doing owner general manager training. Next week we're doing pet care staff training. The week after that is manager training. Then we're doing some more owner GM training and ending with client care counselors for the last 3 days. And the best news is the challenge is only $5 to join for your whole location, all your team members. And the net proceeds of that is going to PAC, the Certification Council and Organization for our industry, because we really align with the fact that training and education and providing that career path and certification will bring you 18 players who are providing great pet care. So you can still join us for the challenge. We'd love to see you over there.
Yeah, and I did put a link for that. And we did start this week, but everything is happening in a Facebook group, and all of the video recordings will be in that Facebook group until April 9th. So you can watch anything you missed 24/7 up until April 9th. There's new sessions being added Monday through Friday every day during March. So definitely join that. Kristen asked if this was taped today. Yes, our Facebook Lives you can find on the Dog Gurus Facebook page as well. And usually we edit them and put them on our YouTube channel as well. So if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, definitely go there. There's tons of prior Facebook Lives on there. There's some other ones we did on staffing as well. Those are obviously all free. So feel free to jump over to our Facebook page, or to our YouTube channel as well, and find those. All right, so thank you guys for being here. We will be focusing on hiring and staff training kind of the rest of this month. So look for our upcoming Facebook Lives, which we're trying to do every Thursday. Sometimes it fluctuates, but usually once a week we're jumping on Facebook Live somewhere. But we're going to talk a lot about staff training. So if you have other questions, shoot us an email and we'll try to cover those in the rest of the month. And otherwise, have a great rest of the week, everybody.
Bye.